Usually, a government contracting document is like a 62-point cure for insomnia.
Oh, absolutely. It just sounds like a stack of paper designed specifically to put you to sleep.
Right. But if you look really closely at the HHS solicitation affirmations, version 2.0 from the Texas Health and Human Services Commission and the Department of State Health Services, you aren't actually looking at just red tape.
No, not at all. You are looking at this hyper-specific mirror of a state's deepest fears and highest priorities.
Yeah, it's exact legal, economic, and technological boundaries. So, our mission for this deep dive today is to unpack this really dense legal document. Because if you want to do business with the state of Texas, well, this is the gauntlet you have to run.
And what's fascinating here is that this single document applies to absolutely everyone.
I mean, everyone.
Everyone. So a vendor pitching a multi-million-dollar cloud-based medical record system has to sign the exact same form as, local office supply store trying to sell the state 3 boxes of ballpoint pens. Yeah, the state demands uniformity. We are looking at a masterclass in how a local government leverages its immense purchasing power to enforce everything from, standard anti-bribery rules to modern mandates involving artificial intelligence, foreign adversaries, and extremely complex social issues.
So, before a vendor even gets to negotiate a price, they have to agree to these 62 affirmations. Let's start with the baseline reality of doing business with the government, which is essentially this. You give up your secrets.
You really do.
Okay, let's unpack this. Clause 6 states that a vendor's response remains a firm and binding offer for 240 days.
Which is a really long time.
Yeah, signing this is like standing in a glass house while proposing marriage.
Yeah.
You are locked in for roughly 8 months, and the curtains are just wide open for anyone walking by to look inside.
And, the logistics behind that 240-day lock-in are purely self-defensive on the part of the government.
How so?
Well, government procurement is notorious for its pace. A single proposal might have to survive a technical evaluation committee, a financial review board, a legal compliance check.
Oh, man.
And sometimes they even have to wait for a new fiscal budget to be approved by the legislature. So a state agency cannot afford to have a vendor suddenly raise their quoted price on month 7 just because the cost of raw materials went up.
Right, so the state transfers that market volatility risk entirely onto the vendor.
Exactly.
So then we have clauses 3 and 56, which deal with the Texas Public Information Act. And this is where the glass house analogy really takes shape.
For sure.
Because the document explicitly warns that any information submitted by a vendor can be disclosed to the public. So if I'm a software company with a highly unique pricing model or like a proprietary algorithm that gives me a competitive edge, I can't just cross my fingers and hope my competitors don't file a public records request to see my winning bid.
No, you definitely can. And the burden of protecting that intellectual property falls 100% on the business.
Right.
You cannot simply stamp the word confidential in big red ink across the front page of your proposal.
Oh, wait, really? That doesn't work?
No. In fact, Clause 5 explicitly warns that doing a blanket confidentiality claim subjects your entire response to being disqualified.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, a vendor has to painstakingly go through their own proposal, redact the specific trade secrets, and submit a separate, explicitly labeled Public Information Act copy.
And if they don't?
If they fail to do that administrative chore correctly, well, their trade secrets just become public domain.
That is terrifying. And playing games with that transparency carries massive penalties, too. Clauses 2 and 61 state that submitting false statements or material misrepresentations voids the contract entirely.
Yep, it constitutes a material breach.
So a vendor is legally certifying that every single detail is current, complete, and accurate.
Right, because taxpayer money is the lifeblood of these contracts. So the default position of the state is total unyielding public transparency.
They don't mess around.
The state is telling you up front that they will audit your claims. And if you lie about your capabilities, you won't just lose the contract. You could face legal action for defrauding the government.
Which nobody wants. So it's one thing to force a vendor to lay all their cards on the table, but the document takes a fascinating turn when it outlines who the state actually prefers to give its money to.
Yeah, this part is really interesting.
It's not just a blind pursuit of the lowest bidder. Clause 13 lists out the Texas preferences, and the specificity here is just wild to me. It legally favors local vendors under the Buy Texas initiative, but it goes so far beyond just preferring a company with, like, a Dallas headquarters.
Because the state uses this clause as a massive multi-billion-dollar lever for economic stimulus and environmental policy.
I actually have to read some of these because it sounds almost like a scavenger hunt.
Go for it.
Okay, so the list includes agricultural products grown in Texas, goods produced by Texas resident service disabled veterans, and products made of recycled or remanufactured materials. Wait, so if I'm bidding to provide landscaping services for a state hospital, does using Texas vegetation native to the region actually give me a literal edge over someone pitching non-native grass?
It absolutely gives you a legal weighted advantage in the scoring process.
That is so specific.
It is, but state procurement is a tool to shape the local ecosystem. By giving a scoring preference to a vendor who uses, say, rubberized asphalt paving material or recycled motor oil, or products created by persons with intellectual or physical disabilities, the state creates a guaranteed lucrative market for those specific goods and services.
Okay, I see. So they're essentially subsidizing green policies and social welfare through commerce rather than just handing out direct government grants.
Exactly.
There are even clauses, specifically 28 and 29, mandating computer and television recycling programs.
Which really demonstrates how the state protects its environment using its wallet.
Right.
But, with billions of dollars flowing through these preferred channels, they also have to aggressively protect the integrity of the process itself.
Makes sense.
So Clause 33 dives into fraud, waste, and abuse with a strict zero-tolerance policy. It mandates that any employee or contractor who even has reasonable cause to believe fraud has occurred is legally required to report it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they embed the toll-free hotline for the state auditor's office, 1-800-TX-AUDIT, directly into the vendor's contract.
So they're essentially deputizing every single contractor out there.
Pretty much.
And part of protecting that money involves aggressively policing the so-called revolving door between state employees and private vendors. Clauses 31, 37, and 38 outline these strict cooling-off periods.
Oh, these are intense.
Yeah, if you are a former state officer or employee who participated in a procurement or contract negotiation, you cannot turn around and accept employment from that specific vendor for 2 full years after the contract is signed.
And if you look at the logistics of that constraint, 2 years is an eternity in the corporate world.
Right. People move jobs so fast now.
Exactly. The state is shutting down the classic kickback scenario where a government procurement officer awards a massive lucrative contract to a company on a Friday and then magically starts a high-paying executive job at that exact same company on a Monday.
Yeah, it maintains a hard firewall between the regulator and the regulated.
Definitely.
So moving on, it's really important to look at these next clauses objectively. I want to be clear to you listening. Regardless of where anyone stands politically, as an analyst, it's just fascinating to see how the state embeds its legislative priorities right into basic commerce.
Yes, absolutely. And we need to explicitly state that we are not taking sides or endorsing any of these viewpoints whatsoever. We are strictly impartial here.
Exactly. We are simply reporting the factual requirements that the state of Texas mandates in this document. We move from dictating what kind of asphalt a vendor uses to the state using its wallet to enforce ideological and political borders. The document acts as a legislative mirror.
Because to do business with Texas, vendors must certify their compliance with several highly specific, legally mandated prohibitions.
Right.
A government contract here is not just a simple exchange of goods for cash. It is a legally binding agreement that the vendor operates entirely within the moral and legal framework defined by the state legislature.
Let's look at the boycott prohibitions. Under Clause 39, vendors must certify that they do not and will not boycott Israel.
All right.
Then Clause 45 requires them to verify they do not boycott energy companies. And Clause 46 requires verification that the vendor does not have a practice or policy that discriminates against a firearm entity or firearm trade association.
Right.
I have to admit, I'm stuck on the logistics of this. So what does this all mean for a vendor who just wants to sell office chairs or software? Do they still have to affirm all this? I mean, if I'm a cloud storage company, how does my corporate stance on fossil fuels or firearms have any bearing on my ability to store data for the state?
It's a fair question. From the state's perspective, those industries like energy and firearms are foundational to the Texas economy and its cultural identity. The enforcement mechanism here is that the state leverages its purchasing power to ensure taxpayer funds do not subsidize any corporate entity that actively opposes or divests from its core industries.
Oh, I see.
So if your cloud storage company has a corporate policy refusing to do business with oil and gas companies, well, The state of Texas views that as an economic attack on its infrastructure, and they will simply refuse to do business with you.
The document also explicitly limits how state funds can be used regarding deeply debated national issues like abortion and gender transitioning.
Yes, it does.
Clauses 40, 41, and 52 dictate that appropriated funds cannot be used to pay for elective abortion procedures. Furthermore, those funds cannot be distributed to individuals or entities or even their affiliates that perform non-Medicaid reimbursable abortions.
The state is building an absolute financial firewall here. They are tracing every dollar to ensure it doesn't inadvertently fund activities the legislature has restricted.
And we see this continued in Clause 42, right?
Yeah. Yes, which mandates that public money cannot directly or indirectly be used to provide or facilitate prohibited gender transitioning procedures or treatments for certain children.
And this legislative mirror reflects recent historical events as well. Clause 44 addresses COVID-19 passports. Vendors must certify that they do not require their customers to provide proof of COVID-19 vaccination or proof of post-transmission recovery to gain access to or receive services from the vendor's business.
And acknowledging any such vaccine passport requirement makes a vendor instantly ineligible for a state-funded contract.
Instantly.
By signing this 62-point document, the vendor is legally binding their entire corporate operation to the state's legislative priorities for the full duration of the contract.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
We go from Texas bluebonnets and domestic political priorities to a hard, fast pivot into modern global threats.
The shift is intense.
The whiplash is so real. The state isn't just worried about local compliance anymore. It is actively drawing a defensive line against international cyber risks.
And this raises an important question about how government contracting has had to rapidly adapt to 21st century geopolitical realities.
Because things move so fast now.
Exactly. State and local governments are finding themselves on the absolute front lines of global cybersecurity. They cannot wait for federal policies to slowly trickle down through Congress.
No, they'd be sitting ducks.
They have to protect their own data and infrastructure right now, contract by contract.
So clauses 49, 50, and 53 focus heavily on foreign adversaries. Vendors are strictly prohibited from contracting with companies that are majority-owned, controlled by, or headquartered in China, Iran, North Korea, or Russia.
Which is a pretty robust list.
Yeah, and Clause 50 gets incredibly specific about forbidding any subcontract that would provide direct or remote access to or control of critical infrastructure in Texas by those designated countries.
Think about what constitutes critical infrastructure today, though.
Like the power grid.
The power grid, yes, but also water treatment facilities and massive health data systems containing the personal medical information of millions of citizens.
Oh, right.
The state is treating its digital and physical infrastructure as a high-value target in global cyber warfare. So they are forcing the vendor to map out their entire supply chain and guarantee that a state adversary doesn't have a back door into, say, a Texas hospital's database.
It's not just who you are doing business with, it's the technology you are bringing into the state's ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Like Clause 48 requires that vendors providing cloud computing services comply with TX-RAMP. So what actually is TX-RAMP?
So TX-RAMP stands for the Texas Risk and Authorization Management Program.
Okay.
It is essentially a standardized, rigorous security vetting process for cloud computing. Before a vendor can plug their cloud software into a state agency's network, they have to prove their encryption and data security protocols meet the state's stringent baseline.
So it's like a digital bouncer.
Basically, it prevents a vendor with weak cybersecurity from accidentally exposing state data to a ransomware attack.
But the technological mandate that really stops you in your tracks is Clause 54, Artificial Intelligence Disclosure.
This is a huge one.
I mean, 10 years ago, an AI disclosure clause was definitely not on a standard vendor affirmation form for office supplies or landscaping.
Not at all. The rapid inclusion of AI clauses highlights how quickly these legal documents must evolve. The state is placing the burden of disclosure squarely on the vendor to identify any autonomous systems being utilized.
And the document casts an incredibly wide net with its definition.
It really does.
A vendor has to explicitly disclose in writing any artificial intelligence system used to complete a deliverable. It defines this as a machine-based system that, for explicit or implicit objectives, infers from provided information a method to generate outputs, such as predictions, content, recommendations, or decisions.
That covers a lot of ground.
It really does. So So if a vendor uses a predictive text AI to help draft their proposal or an algorithm to optimize the delivery route for their trucks, do they have to disclose that?
Under a definition that broad, they very well might. The state wants to know exactly how much autonomy, adaptiveness, and potential algorithmic bias is baked into the products and services they are purchasing.
That makes sense.
Because if a state agency buys a software tool to help screen job applicants, they need to know if an AI is making those predictions so they can audit it for discriminatory practices. They're demanding transparency for the black box of machine learning.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered the global threats, the cyber defenses, the political legislation, and the economic preferences. But the state's reach doesn't stop at your corporate firewall.
No, it goes much deeper.
It extends right into your personal wallet.
Mm.
Ultimately, an actual human being has to sign this document, bringing us to the fine print and the reality of personal liability.
The abstract concepts of state power suddenly become highly invasive and intensely personal for the business owner.
Yeah, let's talk about Clause 17, the child support obligation. Any vendor subject to the Texas Family Code has to provide the names and social security numbers of every single person who has at least a 25% ownership stake in the business entity.
Which is very personal information.
Very. The document explicitly states this is to cross-reference those individuals to see if they owe child support. You're trying to win a state contract to supply medical gloves, and the state pauses to check if your executives are behind on their alimony.
The state operates as a massive, interconnected data web. From the government's perspective, you cannot benefit from state taxpayer funds through a lucrative contract if you are simultaneously shortchanging the state's family court system or, leaving children without their court-ordered support.
They don't want to fund someone who owes them.
Exactly. They are perfectly willing to use a procurement database to enforce family law.
And that interconnected logic applies to taxes and debts too, right?
Oh, definitely.
Clauses 23 and 24 focus on franchise tax status and debts and delinquencies. If you owe franchise taxes, or frankly any debt to the state of Texas, your contract payments won't just go into your bank account.
Nope.
The state explicitly reserves the right to intercept the payments due to you and apply them directly to your outstanding debt.
The house always wins, and the state always pays itself first.
So true.
If you owe them money, a state contract is just a highly efficient vehicle for them to recoup those funds before you ever see a single dime of profit.
Which brings us to the actual signature page. It is a masterclass in administrative tracking. You don't just sign and date the bottom.
Oh, it's way more complex than that.
You have to list assumed business names, also known as DBAs, and provide the specific Texas counties where those assumed name certificates are filed. You need your Texas franchise tax number, your Texas Secretary of State filing number, and then you get into the federal identifiers.
Yes, the document demands your DUNS number and your SAM.gov unique entity identifier.
For anyone unfamiliar, what exactly are those?
So a DUNS number, the Data Universal Numbering System, is basically a global corporate fingerprint that tracks a business's credit and financial health.
Okay.
And SAM.gov is the federal government's system for award management. Having a SAM identifier means you are already registered and cleared to do business at the federal level.
Wow, okay.
By demanding these, Texas is locking down exactly who you are on a local county level, a state level, a federal level, and a global financial level. There is zero anonymity.
To do business with the state, you must be entirely visible, entirely compliant, and entirely accountable.
Absolutely.
We started this deep dive looking at what seemed like a dry 62-point government compliance form. But what we actually found is, the operating system of the state written out in contract clauses.
That's a great way to put it.
It is a comprehensive map of everything the state of Texas values, fears, and protects. It protects its local economy by favoring native vegetation and recycled goods. It enforces its legislative boundaries regarding boycotts, healthcare, and social issues.
Right.
It defends its digital borders against foreign adversaries and unregulated AI. And it holds its vendors personally accountable, right down to their social security numbers and family court obligations.
And, if a standard business contract today requires you to disclose autonomous machine learning and explicitly block North Korean infrastructure access, what will a vendor have to affirm 10 years from now just to sell a pencil to the government?
That's a wild thought.
Will we see clauses mandating the ethical sourcing of quantum computing components? Or strict prohibitions regarding who owns an employee's biometric data and brain-computer interface logs? The only certainty is that this document will keep evolving, mirroring whatever the state fears or values next.
Considering how fast technological and geopolitical boundaries are blurring, quantum computing clauses are probably just around the corner. Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Next time you see a dry legal document, remember, there is always a whole world hiding in the fine print, just waiting to be unpacked. See you next time.